I want you to listen carefully, because once the story enters your mind, it will never leave. This isn't just another haunted house tale. It's not about ghosts you see, but the ones that watch you, the ones that follow you quietly, patiently, and wait for the moment you finally notice them. This is the story of a room that didn't just hold memories. It held on to the people who entered it. A room that wasn't empty. A room that wasn't dead. A room that was alive. Daniel had just moved from the noise of downtown Chicago to a small, quiet town called Miller Ridge. You know the kind of town: old wooden fences, creaking porches, streets that get silent right after sunset, and neighbors that all know each other's routines. He wanted peace, a break from the stress, a place where he could restart, heal, breathe. The house he rented was old, built sometime in the early 1900s. The kind of place that looked charming in the daytime, but somehow unsettling when the light started to dim. The landlord was an older man with tired eyes and a smile that tried too hard. He walked Daniel through the place, room by room, explaining little cork sticky windows, crooked floorboards, outdated wiring.
Then they reached a door at the end of the hall. The landlord stopped walking, shifted his weight, and cleared his throat. "This one stays locked," he said, tapping the door lightly. "Old storage room. Nothing useful in there." Daniel nodded. He didn't think much of it. Every old house had a door that didn't open, a closet that jammed, or a room full of junk. No reason to overthink. But as they walked away, he noticed the landlord didn't give him the key to that door. The first night came quickly. Daniel unpacked, cooked something simple, and sat on the couch scrolling through his phone. Everything was normal until around a.m. when he heard something. A faint knock. Not from the front door, not from outside. It came from inside the house, inside one of the walls. Thack, 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 slow, rhythmic, like someone tapping wood from the other side. Daniel froze. Then he followed the sound down the hallway, and the closer he got, the more clearly he recognized where it came from. It was coming from behind the locked door. He pressed his ear against the wall beside it. His heart started pounding so hard he could hear blood rushing in his ears. "Hello?" he whispered. The knocking stopped. For 2 seconds, the silence was absolute. Then he heard something worse, a slow, shaky breath, coming from inside the room. Daniel stepped back immediately. "Nope," he muttered, forcing a nervous laugh. "Houses make noises. Old wood, cooling pipes. Nothing to freak out about." He walked back to his bedroom, laid down, and convinced himself it meant nothing. But the knocking came again. This time, at 2:17 a.m., then at 2:43 a.m., almost like a schedule.
He barely slept. The next morning he tried to brush it off. New house, unfamiliar environment, mind playing tricks. Happens to everyone. But the second night was worse. At exactly 2 a.m., the light in the hallway flickered. The air temperature dipped suddenly, just enough for him to see his breath. And then, right on cue, thack, thack, thack. He walked out, irritated but curious. He approached the door again, and this time, as he stood there, he heard something new. A whisper, very faint, almost like someone breathing words through dry, cracked lips. "Can you hear me?" Daniel stumbled backward, his pulse racing. "Who's in there?" No response. Then, a small laugh, high-pitched, unearthly. Something scraped against the inside of the door, like fingernails dragging across wood. That was the moment Daniel knew this wasn't just old house noise. The next morning, he went to confront the landlord, who seemed far too calm. "You heard something?" the landlord asked, voice strangely emotionless. "Yes, something is inside that room. I'm not kidding." The landlord looked away. "Nothing's inside. At least, not anymore." What does that mean? The landlord hesitated. A family lived there once. Parents and 2 kids. One night, the husband lost his mind, locked everyone inside that room. He took a slow breath. They never walked out. Daniel frowned. So you're telling me the room is haunted? I'm telling you not to open it. The landlord replied. That's all. That night, Daniel tried to sleep earlier, but fear has a way of waking you up even when you're exhausted. At 2 a.m. sharp, his eyes opened on their own. Silence. Too much silence. Even the crickets outside had stopped. Then the knocking exploded louder than before. Thak. 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 Daniel grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the hallway. He wasn't sure whether he wanted answers or just wanted the noise to stop, but he felt pulled toward that door, almost hypnotized, like whatever was inside already knew he was coming. He placed his hand on the doorknob. It was ice cold. Before he could pull away, the lock suddenly clicked. The door gently drifted open by itself. Darkness spilled out like thick smoke. Daniel stepped inside. The room was empty, nothing but dust, faded wallpaper, and an old single chair placed perfectly in the center. But the air felt heavy, like the room was breathing, like the walls were expanding and contracting, slow and steady. He shined the flashlight round. The dust on the floor told a different story. There were footprints, fresh ones, bare feet, small feet, children-sized. Daniel's throat tightened. Who's in here? He said shakily. The flashlight flickered. Then he saw it. A shadow in the corner. Not a person. Not a reflection. A lone shadow on the wall, standing upright. Even though no one stood in front of it, it tilted its head slowly, as if studying him. Daniel backed up. This isn't real, he whispered. The shadow stepped forward, but its feet didn't touch the ground. It floated. Daniel dropped the flashlight, and the shadow suddenly stretched taller, wider, its shape shifting like melting wax. 1 second it looked like a man, then a woman, then a child, then something inhuman, with limbs too long, and a face that didn't exist. It whispered with a voice that sounded like several people speaking at once. You shouldn't have entered. Daniel lunged for the door, but it slammed shut. He grabbed the handle, screaming for help, but the metal seared his skin. It was burning hot. Behind him, the shadow drifted closer. The walls began to shake softly, whimpering, like the room itself was crying. The wood beneath his feet creaked, pulsing like a heartbeat. The shadow leaned close to him. We never got out, it whispered. The room suddenly went silent. Then the floor cracked open beneath him just an inch, but he saw something moving inside the gap. Fingers. Small, pale fingers, grabbing from below. Daniel threw himself at the door, slamming his shoulder into it again and again until it finally burst open. He sprinted down the hallway, down the staircase, and out the front door into the freezing night air. He didn't stop running until he reached the main street. He checked into a motel and stayed awake till sunrise. The next morning, he went to the landlord's house immediately, desperate for answers. But the landlord looked confused when Daniel started talking. I heard something in the locked room, Daniel said. Someone was inside. The room opened. I saw shadows. I saw? What room? The landlord interrupted, face pale. Daniel blinked. The extra room at the end of the hallway, the one you told me not to open. The landlord shook his head slowly. There's no extra room in that house. Daniel laughed nervously. Stop messing with me. I'm not messing with you, the landlord said firmly. And if you're talking about that old property in Hemlock Street, that house burned down almost 20 years ago. It's been an empty lot ever since. Daniel stared at him, unable to speak. That's impossible. I stayed there 2 nights ago. No, the landlord whispered. You didn't. Nobody has lived there since the fire. Daniel ran out of the house and back to the location. His heart dropped. The house wasn't there. Not even the foundation. Just an empty, overgrown lot with the remains of burned wood buried in the grass. He walked slowly, trembling, until something caught his eye half buried in the dirt. A scorched wooden plank, with fingernail scratches carved deep across its surface, and underneath the scratches, written faintly, as if by someone who had dragged their dying hand across smoldering wood.
"You're next." Daniel staggered back, breathing heavily, looking around the empty lot as if the shadows could rise again at any moment. For a moment, he convinced himself none of it happened. Maybe exhaustion, stress, sleep paralysis, anything but what he actually saw. But then he felt it. A presence behind him. Something standing still, watching. He turned slowly. Up on the empty lot's invisible second floor where the window of that room used to be, he saw it. A shadow. Perfectly still. Perfectly shaped. And absolutely impossible. It watched him, not blink, moving, just waiting. And somewhere deep inside his mind, a whisper echoed, "We're not finished." And Daniel knew one terrifying truth. Just because a house is gone, doesn't mean the things inside it leave. Some rooms never die, some shadows never fade, and some stories follow you home.
The next morning, Ethan woke up feeling as if someone had been standing over him all night. His bedroom felt colder than usual, and the air smelled faintly of wet earth, like soil that had just been dug up. He rubbed his eyes and tried to shake off the nightmare, but the sound of that whisper, "I found you," still echoed in the back of his mind. Downstairs, the house felt strangely silent. The fridge hummed, the old clock tapped like a heartbeat, but something else, something subtle, pressed on the atmosphere. A heaviness, a presence. He tried ignoring it as he made coffee, but when he opened the cabinet for a mug, one of the plates suddenly slid and crashed to the floor. He flinched. Nothing else moved. He kneeled down, picking up the pieces. But then he froze. On one of the shards, written in something dark, something that looked disturbingly like dried mud, were the words, "DONT, look outside." Ethan felt his breath catch in his throat. He immediately looked toward the window. There was nothing unusual. Just the backyard. Just the trees. Just the morning light stretching across the grass. But the message, someone had to write that, and it definitely wasn't him. He checked the front door locked, checked the windows locked. Still, the plate didn't write itself. Trying to calm himself, he grabbed his phone. A notification popped up, a missed call from an unknown number. No message, no voicemail, just a timestamp, 2:47 a.m. The exact time he saw the figure in the doorway. The exact time the whisper sank into his ear. He felt a cold shiver crawl down his spine. He stepped outside onto the porch to get some air. The sky was gray, heavy, almost metallic. The neighborhood felt quiet, the kind of quiet that belongs to abandoned places. He scanned the trees, the driveway, the street, everything ordinary, yet everything slightly wrong. Colors looked duller, shadows darker, like the world had shifted 1 inch to the left while he was asleep. As he stared out at the yard, something caught his eye near the fence, a single, small footprint in the dirt. Not a human footprint. Too narrow, too long, like a child's footprint stretched in naturally. He stepped closer, then he noticed a second footprint, and a third, each one deeper, as if whatever made them was stepping harder with every move, and they led directly toward his house. Before he could process it, his phone buzzed in his hand. Another unknown number, another call. This time, he answered. He pressed the phone to his ear. Static hissed. A long breath, slow, steady, like someone inhaling inches from the mic. Then a broken whisper. "You shouldn't have looked outside." Ethan's knees nearly buckled. He backed away from the fence, from the footprints, from the voice. He rushed inside and slammed the door shut. His hand shook as he locked it. Then he double-locked it. He leaned against the wall, heart pounding. For a moment, the house was quiet again. Then his phone vibrated, this time a text message. The same unknown number. He opened it. Just a photo. A picture taken from outside his house, looking through his living room window. looking at him standing exactly where he stood right now. But there was something worse. Something behind him in the picture. A tall shadow, long fingers curling toward the back of his neck, and a face made of nothing but darkness. Ethan spun around instantly. No one there, but the smell returned. Wet earth, fresh soil, recently dug graves. His breath trembled. Something was in the house. Something that didn't walk like a human. Something that whispered his name in the dark. Something that left warnings written in dirt. And it wasn't hiding anymore. It wanted him to know it was close.